Ryan Stone, he's a Canadian. A Canadian. And he was part of the Canadian Navy. No, the Canadian Navy. That's better. And he spells his name with an I and not a Y because his parents hated him. Check out his channel by searching YouTube for Ryan Stone. No, Ryan Stone. That's better.
Howdy, lieutenants and economists. The most volatile, evil, disgusting things on the planet, humans. If you have a video request, you can always go to assholeconsulting.com. Yeah, I am gonna charge you, kids. And that is the importance of not fucking up.
You are such an asshole!
How you kids doing? assholeconsulting.com. Get to play sociologist Cappy here today. Dear Captain, I'm not bragging, but please bear with me as I'm trying to establish sample size. I'm a U.S. citizen, and throughout my years of traveling, I've visited this continent. Mexico is this continent. Costa Rica, Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil. Now we're in South America. In the Caribbean, I have visited Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, St. Martin, Antigua, Tortola, and several other islands in the area. What I have learned is that Mexico basically starts at the southern border of Texas, continues all the way to the South Pole. My question is, why is most of South and Central America a shithole, and the United States and Canada relatively stable and prosperous? Does it have something to do with the Spanish conquering that part of the continent versus the British settling North America? I'm baffled as North and South America are basically the same as far as topography and natural resources. What did the Spanish do wrong and the English do right? Thanks in advance. All right, so I did not have the answer, and I had ideas. It turned out I was 80% right, or 80% of other people have come up with this. But let me just go through my notes here. First, yes, you are right, namely with the Spaniards. And there's a lot of other stuff going on here, but the main thing with Spain predominantly taking over most of the Western Hemisphere early on is that two items. One, the Spanish Empire collapsed relatively early compared to the English Empire, or the British Empire, which continued on into North America, specifically the United States and Canada. And even though the Americans had fought for their independence early on, and quote-unquote, we kicked the British out, those forms of government continued on. There were institutions, there was government, there was a constable, there was law, whereas the Spaniards had come over. They did have rules and laws and institutions, but it had not permeated throughout the much larger landmass. Remember, we only had the 13 colonies, or the North America did. Spain took over Central Mexico and Southern America, which is huge. And so there was nowhere quite the infrastructure made. And then when, ironically, because of a ton of silver and gold that they came in and imported and lost the Spanish Armada, the Spanish Empire then dissolved before the British Empire did. I don't mean Spain went away, I mean their empire collapsed. Britain's empire didn't collapse until World War I. So there was no longer this government infrastructure, law and order, institutions, judicial system, things like that, let alone to the same per square foot, per capita levels they would have in North America, or then what was only the 13 colonies. So that was one thing. All of a sudden, you kind of had this anarchy, chaos, plenty of battles between, wars are happening over in Europe. Oh, we're going to have a pitched battle over here, not a pitched battle, but a proxy war over there. Pirates and all that other privateers. But Spain also was like, fuck it, we don't have the resources to keep our empire going up anymore. And so it's like, I guess everybody's up on their own. So there was that. Another thing cited is Spanish government just wasn't as good as Mexican government, or not Mexican government. Spanish government was not as good as British government. You had the Magna Carta, I think it was, Britain, United Kingdom. You had all these other institutions pass on to North America. These had a longer, not only were they better, they had longevity to them, and then also enforceable because Britain was there until about 1780, 83, if I remember my history correctly. But there was just, better laws, better institutions, less corruption. You will see that South America, Central America has higher corruption. You could argue that's indigenous to the people, but I think a lot of it also does come from the type of government that they started out with. So you have that there. Then there is also, although this is a little bit, seems like it's contradictory, but there's also how far away are the current countries in Central and South America, how long have they actually been independent? And the United States was actually quite early. They fought for their independence 1776. But if we look at Mexican independence, for example, Mexican independence, conflict dragged until about 1821, independent constitutional monarchy under Augustine, Father Mexico, struggle through under colonial rule. What's the Peronist movement? Let's look up that Peronist movement. Juan Perón, second wife Eva. Oh God, it's even more recent than I thought. Argentine. Bolivia. I'm sorry, I'm thinking Perón. That's not it. Bolivar. Simon Bolivar Revolution. There we go. I'm sorry. Come on, guys, give old Cappy a break here. I didn't even do good enough in American history. Bolivarian Revolution. All right, in a political process, Venezuela. What? Let's go back to Simon Bolivar. Simon Bolivar. Simon. Okay. Died in 1830. The Liberator, as a Venezuelan military and political related independence current states of Venezuela, Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Panama from the Spanish Empire. So this is like 50 years delayed after the United States. So there was at least a half a century delay for Central and South America to gain their freedom from European powers, which the United States fought off, 50, even 60 years, 70 years before that. So you got that. Then, all right, what kind of government was in place? Well, the colonies still kept, and Canada still kept, the British form of government, more or less, which again was superior to the Spanish form of government, which is still, you could even look at today. So let's do corruption index, Spain versus corruption. Spain, I guarantee, is more corrupt than Britain. Yeah, you can see it just color-coded. Yeah, Spain is a little... And even today, 250 years later, we have that. So they inherited a more corrupt form of government. They didn't gain their independence until at least 50 years later, some even later than that. So there's like this time delay between when Central and South America was freed relative to most of North America, bar Mexico. Another one goes back to the old classic, why do Nords and Scandinavians have the greatest work ethic ever? It's because they had to. And this gets into another thing, the Spaniards during the occupation days. Spain stopped at Mexico. They didn't go north of Mexico. Oh, they sent some expedition and all that, but it wasn't warm. There wasn't the resources. There wasn't the gold. There wasn't the silver. And so Britain and France and I guess Portugal got Brazil. But they had kind of the leftovers of the New World. They weren't the first movers. Spain was. And so Spain's like, oh, look at where all the Incans are. Hey, look, they make great slaves, assuming our smallpox doesn't kill them. And so they kind of said, well, here for the 15 and 1600s, this is where the good stuff is. And it was tropical. It was Mediterranean. It was jungle. It was food growing all around. And this, again, goes back to the classic. Not a lot of fruit hanging from the trees in Oslo. Helsinki doesn't have plush, fertile ground. You got a caribou, but you don't have varmint running all over the place that you can capture and eat. And so this then talks about or leads to how there's a difference in work ethic. You got to save up your money. You have to innovate more. You have to prepare for 6 months, 7 months of winter. Whereas if you're in a much more moderate climate, you can have a year-round growing season. The 6 months of winter is not coming. So that has an effect on survival strategies that, though at the time, would play to the benefit of people who lived in the Mediterranean and had the natural resources. Over the long haul, especially after the Industrial Revolution, that Nordic Protestant work ethic is what put further distance between Central and South America versus that of America and Canada. And so when they came to, what was it? The Pilgrims almost starved the first time. And what was it? Because they thought, we'll all be communists. We'll all live in this commune. And then once they decide, no, we're going to have our own, you're going to make your own independent, you're going to work or starve on your own, then things started. But the larger point is a more hostile environment with winter, not as great farming land. There's some fruit, but largely it would only grow down in Georgia and Florida. You don't have a ton of apples growing in Maine, especially not during the winter season. So that also then instilled within the community and the culture a harder work ethic, but I would also say also a propensity to save, a propensity to be very frugal, but then also you had to innovate, you had to create. And it is no shock that the Industrial Revolution was between the United States and Britain largely. So we have that there. So that just further explains the difference as well. Then there is even religion. And this is the one I was going to go with, but it still applies today. And that is the Spaniards were Catholic, and the Brits were largely Protestant. Protestant work ethic, there's that. But there's also the issue of having kids. The Catholics, you can't have birth control. Breed your freaking asses off. The Protestants are a little bit, hang on now. I mean, not to say Protestants back then didn't, be common to have a family of 8 so you could work on the farm. But they're a little bit more, especially more recently too, after the Industrial Revolution. It's like, we don't need to have 8 kids. We can't afford 8 kids. Whereas Catholics, breed all you want. You're a sinner if you use birth control. And so you have more kids. And then, this is something I wish some real economists would go and study. Okay, I know we all look at income and wealth and labor productivity, but how about the per capita, huh? And we can see this today. Let's take a look. The birth rates, or fertility rate by country. Hopefully get a nice little map. Okay, here's an image. It's no Africa, but they have more kids. A full kid more or 2. No, a full kid more, if I do look at that right. Color coding, yeah. They're not spitting out a zillion children, but they have more children. And if you have more children, by today's standard, not in the olden days, that was an asset. Now, your income per capita goes down, your wealth per capita goes down. Not because necessarily your nominal wealth has gone down, but the number of capita you have has gone down. But you can see that that doesn't stop at the border. That's universal. I mean, you go to the trailer parks of Wyoming, you'll see plenty of Americans spitting out more kids than they could afford. And I know some people in Brazil, they're like, no way am I having... I have a buddy of mine, she's from Peru, and she got her tubes tied. She's like, F no, not... So, but you go to Africa, holy shit. I guess we're just fucking and swatting at flies all day, aren't we? Holy crap, look at that. My God. But anyway, to a lesser extent, not compared to Africa. But it should not be a surprise. Africa has the lowest standards of living. Yeah, you have the highest number of kids. I wonder what that does to your statistics. So that's another thing there. So if you're having more kids, that just makes you poorer. It does. It does. Even though you could be generating the same amount of wealth per parent or per household, if there's more mouths in your household, a household, then it goes down. Let me consult my other notes. I think that was it. I think that's really what it was. Technology. Yeah, the Industrial Revolution was predominantly United Kingdom, United States affair. First mover status on that. Slaves, when you have generation after generation of slaves, there were way more slaves in the Spanish Empire than there was in the United States. I don't know if that, because it's so long ago, I don't know how that has an effect now. I would say the sooner you free your slaves, the sooner you free labor to pursue their own endeavors, and you free up a lot of capital, a lot of innovation and productivity. But despite what you've heard, slavery was the country was not built on the backs of slaves. Some parts of it was, but not the country. And then we destroyed that economy. What bits were built on slavery? It was called the Civil War, and ever since then, not really a penny has been built on slaves. I know that hurts a lot of people's fifis, but it's true. There was even the whole Reconstruction period. Do you remember that in high school civics? I barely remember it because I was a horrible student. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, so there you go. I'm sorry, maybe that was a bit too academic, but there you go. All right, questions, answers, links to everything down below. We'll see you guys later. Toodles.